I'm going to call the meeting to order. First on the agenda is we need to approve the minutes from February 27th.
Long time ago.
Yeah.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from February 27th.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Great.
I'm going to
Super.
abstain. 'Cause I was here, didn't
Should we be
know.
up there?
How do how would I do that?
You have
We're in the
to,
corner. Yeah, now we're in the corner, so that's.
you have to do a different view.
I just have this here so that I know if somebody joins, right? Because otherwise,
But it's, I
It is
think
weird
it's,
seeing
as long as we're up there
it's so gigantic.
in the corner, I think it's okay.
Yeah,
So there isn't anybody.
Maybe it defaults to whoever called in. No.
there we go, yeah.
And then you submit them and it looks like our minutes have been,
Yes.
whoever it is you send them to. so
Terry and
we'll
Lee.
have- Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
good, Terry. Okay, great.
Yep.
Okay, so the next thing I want to do is just confirm our next few meetings. I already reached out to Rich since he wasn't able to make the meeting. He can't do August 21st. In June, usually we like to do the third Monday, but it's Juneteenth. So we meet on that day because that's a national holiday.
Yep.
So that's why it's the 26th. Is everybody okay?
I have a
I don't,
potential of not being here.
okay,
My son's coming from Colorado and it may be close to that time, or at that time. But I'll do my best and I'll let you know if I can.
I forgot my phone, so I don't know.
don't know. Okay,
Without my phone, I have no idea. I'm pretty sure I'm not available for the 21st, but I'm not positive about that.
August
August
21st.
21st.
Oh, we're just on June.
Yeah.
We're
No, I
still on
know.
June.
Just looking at all the dates.
Hey,
So you guys are okay, June?
I'm okay, June. Beyond that, I'm not sure when I'll be away.
right,
Yeah, that's a little how I feel too.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted to know so then I could figure out when I am away. I also don't know if there's anything wrong with saying like, let's take 1 month off in the summer or something like that. It's not like we approve construction projects or, anything that's timely, but
I feel like if we know, we're such a small group that if we know someone isn't gonna, if we know Rich isn't gonna be around for the 21st and he's missing this meeting, can we just skip August? Can we just choose August to skip? And, or,
yeah, that's fine with me. It sounds like you might have an issue on June 26th, which you can let us know, because there aren't any other Mondays in June unless we do an earlier Monday, and then that conflicts
That's
with
the,
you. And then does conservation meet on Tuesdays or Mondays?
Tuesday.
And then you're also, you have Monday meetings for something else, don't you?
CPA,
CPA?
No, not this
No.
time of year,
Oh,
but
okay.
but we have forestry.
agriculture.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Okay, yeah, because I know we have to be careful.
Which sometimes I remember and sometimes I don't.
We're happy when you show up.
Okay, so Sally, maybe you could just shoot us all an email when you get
Yeah.
in front of your
I
phone,
will,
because we're
yeah.
allowed to talk about meeting times over email. It's not considered
Right.
deliberation, so we're not going to break any
Right.
rules. Okay, so I'm going to just say Sally, TBD, July. Lisa, you were saying you don't know.
Yeah, for the rest of the summer, I know I'll be away sometime.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'll do my best now that I know these dates.
this date's okay.
okay. Louise,
I have no issues.
I think it's okay for me.
Okay.
August is just the one that.
Lisa,
I'm
TBD.
not so sure
Well,
about.
then, I think we could just say no to August then. Just
Okay.
automatically just say we won't have an August meeting.
Great.
And then, I know I just put September on here because I was like, let's just keep going.
Yeah.
But, also I own my own business, so I need to know fairly far ahead of time when I don't take any clients because I have to come from New York City, stay overnight, blah, blah, blah. So, do we think September 18th is okay? Liz?
Probably okay.
Fine.
Yeah, okay. All right, fine. So Arthur, you'll get back to us on the 26th, but right now I'm going to go ahead and have Terry hold the room for us. And then Lisa, you'll come back to us on July 17th, whatever. And then Sally, you'll shoot us an
It'll
email.
be a couple of weeks before I finalize that, but I'll let you know as soon as
Yeah,
I.
we'll figure it out. Okay. And then we're going to say no meeting in August. Cool. All right. So I changed the agenda around a little bit and moved vision and mission up further. because I think I said before, as I've reached out to NHESP or to the pipeline people and they come back and say, here's what's going on, I've been a little bit stuck as to what do I say to them next, because I'm not sure what we should be trying to accomplish. This is a different committee than the previous one. This is a different time period than the previous committee. So we may end up with the same exact mission and vision as what they had. I don't know, but I thought that we should work through it as a group. So I sent you some stuff ahead of time. One thing was just defining what the difference is between a vision statement and a mission statement, because they are different. And so I gave you, I think, some of the stuff in front of you. Yeah, so if you, this one with the little symbol at the top is sort of the same as what's on here. So a vision statement is, it's a destination, it's where you're going. And it's not necessarily something that can be accomplished, which is interesting. So I don't know if you remember when so the other piece of paper I gave you was what the previous vision and mission were for the previous committee. And their vision was to restore, oh, I have a typo, I hate that. To restore and preserve the bog by fostering community stewardship of the Kampoosa Bog Drainage Basin, ACEC. So when I read that, I was like, restore.
I circled that.
Wow. But I looked at a lot of other, when I started really looking into the difference between a vision and a mission statement, it is supposed to be aspirational. And so I looked at some other nonprofits. There's an organization, I'm going to get the name of it wrong, but it's something like called Water or something. And their vision statement is to provide access to clean water for everybody in the whole world. Wow. Well, great.
Not happening.
Good luck. Right. That's a gigantic task to try to tackle, but that's what these vision statements are supposed to be. So it's also an ideal, like what's the penultimate thing that we want to try to accomplish, and we build toward it. So it's not, we haven't achieved it, we just want to try to get there. It speaks to an action, like here's what we're going to do. It's kind of the thing that guides us. So every time we would, I guess, look back at our vision statement before we tackled a particular project, before we agreed to take on something, we would look back at our vision statement and go, does it match up? And then it's supposed to be broad. So if I look at the original, to restore and preserve the bog by fostering community stewardship of the Kampoosa Bog Drainage Basin, ACEC, it actually does meet all of these requirements. It's broad, it's aspirational, it's an action, it's pretty concise. You know, it's not a gigantic paragraph, it's one single sentence. And I created this little Venn diagram because your vision and your mission and your values should all kind of overlap like that. So does anybody have any questions about vision statement?
Yes. I brought this up in the last committee years ago. When you use the word restore, you have to have a target date. I mean, in historic sites and so forth. I mean, do you restore it to James Madison or Mrs. Scott DuPont? Do you restore it to Margaret Crescent French or to Daniel Chester French? Do we pick 8,000 years ago with the archaeological dig?
Yeah, right.
Or do we pick the 50s when our environment was, let's say, a little safer for the environment without the chemicals we're now tossing into the environment?
Or just 60 to 80 years ago, which was when a lot of our invasives first showed up.
Yeah.
Some of them only showed up 40 years ago. It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
And yet they're taking over,
I would suggest pre-turnpike.
Is that the 60s?
55, it
Yeah.
Oh,
started
55.
55.
Was it all the way out here by then?
Yeah, well, they did the Springfield Albany loop in 55. They started the process.
That changed everything,
Yeah,
everything.
it changed the water flow, it changed the,
You had
Noise
salt,
pollution, light
you had-
pollution.
Yeah, I mean, you had everything coming in when the turnpike went through.
Right.
That, I think, is a critical time.
so, I mean, that's a target date, which again, the environment, the bog was somewhat self-contained and protected just because it,
Secret, kind of. and-
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, so when you go to restore, I mean, that's a consideration also in the mission statement. I mean, and that's a way to satisfy it and give us a objective to achieve, because nature's going to do what it wants to do. My other philosophy on the bog, and also in other functions with environment, the bog is what it is because it wasn't touched or manipulated all these times. So as we touch and manipulate it to bring it back, are we harming the future? Or are we preserving the future?
Right. What are the trade-offs?
And that's complicated given the
Oh, yeah.
invasives,
And just what
it's hard
comes out of the sky.
Yeah.
What comes out of the sky? I mean, acid
Acid
rain,
rain.
things like that. So Arthur, do you have any knowledge of prior to the turnpike? Were you at the Marions then?
No, I wasn't.
You're too young for that, right? Yeah.
I understand.
So my father was on the planning board when the turnpike went through
Right, yeah.
and fought it tooth and nail. Not that it did any good, but
Well, historically, it was supposed to come this side of the bog,
well, if anybody,
through the Marian fathers.
if anybody'd had a half a brain, it would have gone to Pittsfield.
Well, yes, definitely.
But they didn't, so no, didn't.
So, because the Marians were approached in the late 40s by a contracting company to pump the bog out for peat moss.
My goodness.
And they fought, I mean, they said, no way. I mean, fortunately, they had a couple outstanding priests who were totally environmentalists and said, no way.
Do we have any history of the bog before then? Before the turnpike? Do we know really anything
Like
about
any
it?
university studies?
Right,
or,
exactly.
Yeah, any surveys or
Like I say, it was one of those jewels that nobody touched. It was
Yeah.
there. I mean,
And the reason I ask is because it seems to me that the date of the turnpike going through is one that we can pretty much nail down. And we can say, we know for sure that it had an impact on the bog.
in the Stockbridge Library, they have that big walled aerial photo, and that's right around the 50s. I'll have to stop in and see if it's turnpike's in it or not. My gut feeling it is, but and they may have some aerial photos of Stockbridge, which would show
the
that.
turnpike would have had to make a lot of aerial photos and a lot of surveys, actually.
Right, yeah.
So are you suggesting keeping the word restore in our vision statement? Because to me, that's the word, that's the problem in the old.
It's the aspirational part of it.
Because to say that we're going to restore it, to particularly provide a particular date, is immediately to put us in, in conflict with the MTA and the Mass Turnpike Authority and the Tennessee Gas Line people. Instead of having them as allies, potential allies for preservation purposes, we say, oh, no, we actually want to restore it to a pre-turnpike, Tennessee gas pipeline world.
So why don't we think about the word stewardship as opposed to, which implies something different than management or restoration? And I'm not sure if it would fit exactly in that sentence, but that's more what I see us doing as being stewards rather than, we're not actively managing what goes on there.
Well, that's for us to decide, but yeah. I don't know if we've totally landed that, because I think we need to go through this process to figure out what is our mission.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that what power we have
Agree.
to.
Right. And none of us is an owner.
I am.
You are, of anything within the ACEC.
Well, you live in it too, don't you?
That's true, yeah.
You guys both do.
But this is relatively speaking, tiny portions of land ownership of something that's, 1,350 acres.
Plus part of it is in me.
Plus part of it.
250 or 225, whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the vision statement and the mission statement, if you took out restore, then it still holds, I think it holds what our purpose is. Because stewardship is caring for the past and the future. Restore is a target going backwards. And not to say it's wrong, but we can't move the turnpike. And we don't have enough research to justify requesting that Massachusetts puts it to Pittsfield. You know, that holds us to a point, and then we have to identify the point, and we have to justify the point.
I don't think I knew it existed as a child.
Right?
Like as a thing.
Yeah, I had
Yeah.
no idea that was there. I mean,
Right?
you know, Rattlesnake Mountain Road was closed down in the winter,
Right? Oh, yes.
so there was no traffic.
Right? There was no salt.
I mean, and that has been not such a distant
No, that came on.
past.
My son's 40,
House, yeah,
40 years ago.
yeah.
They did not plow rattlesnake.
Right.
And then they plowed down as far as Stan Piaczek's because they
Right.
was building.
Yeah.
However, nobody could turn around and get out.
Right.
So for a couple years, they didn't plow through. And then so somewhere 40 years ago, they started to open it up as a,
And I think that you can probably pinpoint a lot of the growth of the Phragmites to that era. I mean, I know that over the course of the study of the bog, there's been a lot of talk about that the Phragmites follow salt. And
Interesting.
so roads that are salted are likely to
Are more prone.
have Phragmites on the side. But on the other hand, there may also be something in that our highway departments and don't necessarily clean their vehicles when they go through with the plow or the whatever, the road grader. And so they're taking whatever they pick up and
distributed.
putting it down again.
That's why I get a billion dandelions right along
Oh, yeah.
the front of my driveway, but I don't have any in my driveway, but it's right from that.
Well, it was so beautiful from Sally's house out to Prospect. It looked like somebody actually planted a hedgerow of dandelions.
And then on the other side of it is a whole hedgerow of buckthorn.
Yes.
So I wonder, I mean, I see, and I don't know if this is vision or mission, but I see us more as trying to coordinate between all the organizations that are involved there.
Clearinghouse.
Yeah, to provide stewardship for the bog. But we're not the ones actually doing it, although, you know, we may be doing some things, I don't know. But that's more what I see us doing than restoring or, you know, it's in the interest of preserving. But, you know, my sense is there's agencies doing work or have been doing work that just don't talk to each other.
Yeah.
That part of what I would like to see us do is get.
Don't coordinate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if somebody's going to remove, I don't know, I'm making this up. If Tennessee Gas is going to remove Phragmites, should we just have the Turnpike remove it at the same time or whatever? I don't know, some sort of coordination between.
Organizations that are identifying what's there.
Yeah.
To get that information out.
Sharing it,
And know
yeah.
what's where. That's more what I see as our vision.
Well, there was a very strong interaction between the Kampoosa Bog Stewardship Committee and the Turnpike and Tenneco.
Right, and the Nature Conservancy.
And
But I think,
no, the Nature Conservancy was only sort of peripheral. It was just really something, I mean, Kay Sadeghi was the one from the Nature Conservancy, but
for Lowenstein,
Yeah.
Frank Lowenstein, he wasn't around that much. It was, what's his name?
They were involved with
was-
pulling a lot of grant money.
Yeah, they did get grant money.
Projects.
They weren't necessarily involved in the hands-on, as I recall. And then who was the guy that we used to go out on the bog with from the state, whose name is totally escaping me now?
but I think the question is, what has the Nature Conservancy done since?
But now the Nature Conservancy has purchased the Chassell property, which puts them in the mix.
Yeah.
And that was, I don't know how long ago, but when they bought that property, which is across from us, that made them an abutter and a sort of required steward of.
They're in a butter to me, all my
Right.
west lot.
And my sense when they.
big chunk of land.
With us is that there's information in boxes that nobody's.
And they're down to 2 people.
Yeah, and they don't have.
Seven.
the time to-
Yeah,
But I
so-
think in those places, there's information.
Yeah,
Would be
probably.
good for us to
Yeah.
know.
Well, I don't think that we should try to nail down the vision statement right now. What I want to do is go through what a mission statement is and then just write down some of these words, clearinghouse, stewardship, preservation, whatever, just for, restore, question mark.
Well, can I just say one more thing about restore is I don't think we know how to restore it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't know what it was, so we don't really know how to restore it. We don't know what was there that's been lost. We know what's
methods that are
there
used
that's.
now that we
yeah.
know aren't entirely successful, and yet they're used repeatedly.
Yeah.
And
You were
it's-
talking about burning, right? Were you talking about burning?
Talking
Not
about
being
burning
successful or
and
something?
cutting and all kinds
Yeah.
of things. I mean, it's the nobody believes that you can eradicate Phragmites.
Yeah.
And yet certain methods are just used over and over again. I think just because people are desperate, they just think, well,
Again, my thinking is we do nothing with the Phragmites.
And then you lose it.
Okay, did Phragmites show up 800 years ago?
There were native Phragmites.
I see what I'm saying is, if we do nothing, what is going to be the bog in 50 years, 1,000 years?
Well, it's going to look like what my property looks like,
Yeah. And is that okay?
which will take over all the plants.
Right, yeah,
And so we lose huge numbers of endangered species. We lose habitat for,
oh, I know the site.
Well,
yeah.
land where it was water, now it's land, right?
Right, yeah.
Because they create these mass.
Yeah,
And the acidity will change.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
I know hundreds of thousands of dollars were spent in the bog on Phragmites.
Yes. And many
by
years
which organization?
by the Stewardship Committee.
There are various things, but I know most of it went through the Marians as a property owners.
Okay.
So they were the ones signing the grants, and then they got the check and passed it to the appropriate.
Yeah, Jess Toro did most of the work.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, Jess was just starting.
So we bid out, contracted.
Right. So the question being, can Phragmites be eliminated?
There are a lot fewer. I mean, when they started doing the clip and drip, it really cut back the Phragmites tremendously, but you can't get rid of them if I've got them on my property.
Right.
Because they're going to be picked up by the ducks and the geese, and they're going to run down the river and.
The wind
you know,
blows. And
Exactly.
yeah, and I mean, I think
And over at Clark Pond and
all over the place.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're shoveling
number 7.
the stuff against the tide.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
exactly.
Right.
To try and get rid of
But it's a good
Phragmites.
question. It's a good question.
It is a good
What will
question.
happen
Yeah.
down the line?
We would lose the things that make the bog unique
Right.
if we let the Phragmites take over. So that, I think, that's been the underlying reason why the Conservation Commission has allowed the use of chemicals in Kampoosa, is because there does not seem to be any other option at this point to get rid of it.
Okay.
We hold our nose and go,
Right. Lesser of two evils.
yeah, exactly, because the alternative is just, that the bog will be devastated.
It won't be a bog anymore.
No.
Yeah. Okay, so a mission statement, different than a vision statement, because it's actually the roadmap for how we get to where we want to go. It talks about our purpose and what we want to accomplish. It tends to be more verbose. You can see the one from the previous committee. They had a lot of bullet points, and they even had sub bullet points under some of the bullet points. It talks about how to achieve our goals. It gives a framework for activities and operations. It lists all the actions that we must take to achieve the vision, so it's, supporting the vision. It uses clear language and is concise, and I think this is important because I've worked at companies where we've worked on our mission statement for our department and it just goes on and on. And when you put too much stuff in there, nothing's achievable and you don't even know where to focus or where to begin. So it communicates the why, it's specific and actionable, and it really should be one sentence. Like it could be a long sentence with comma this, comma that, comma this, comma that. They chose to use bullet points, which I think is fine as well, but it's not, 3,000 words or whatever. And then, the mission statement, you talk about the cause, the who, what, where. We may not have a who, a what, and a where, but the action, how do you improve the cause and what do we do? Like, what are we actioning from the cause? And then what kind of results? What are the impacts that we want to see? And even to some extent, why? So I wanted to try to write down some of the words you guys were talking about, and so I heard restore, question mark? Not really sure, and if so, is there a timeline? Or not a timeline, a time stamp, I guess. Then we said, we talked about the word clearinghouse, stewardship,
Education.
oh yeah, that's a good one.
Coordination. And I like outreach too.
There's lines in this and I'm not staying in them at all. They have, okay, so their mission, through the union of stakeholders, we will educate the public, okay, of education, define baseline environmental data, which that's kind of what we're talking about a little bit. What's the baseline? What did it used to look like when you were a kid or before you were a kid or whatever? Coordinate cultural and environmental research, communicate research results and communicate activities, review and comment on proposed developments, all in order to restore and preserve the bog. So they reinforce the vision in the last part of that statement. I'm just going to write communication, which sort of is the same as outreach, but.
What do we think the developments might be?
That whole phrase kind of bothers me because it feels like the review and comment is actually done with authority by the planning board, the select board, and the conservation commission. And that seems like overreach for this the iteration
Yes.
of the committee to say that we will review and comment on proposed developments, because I think that's completely outside of our ability to do.
However, if a proposal comes to any of those boards,
Right.
I think they would look to this committee for at least input or advice.
I think it would be good if we collectively watched those committees to know, is something coming up that would be of interest to us, so that we could comment to the board specifically that it was involved.
The authoritative board.
Not the people proposing it, but the board.
Right. It can go from us to the board or the board to us.
Yeah.
And I think that's general enough.
You
That
think it's
covers
general?
that. Yeah, it says review and comment. It doesn't say make a decision.
Right.
Just review and comment.
Yeah, we're available to share
Yeah,
knowledge.
right.
Yeah. If we keep that, I don't know if we would keep
I
that.
mean, you have two members of the Conservation Commission here, so
Right.
we would certainly bring anything that would come before us.
But if you need a stamp of approval, or it could support a action by the planning board, the conservation commission.
I don't see, given that it's, unless, the Marians decide to sell the whole property, I think it's pretty well protected by conservation easements at the moment. I mean, you've got our property, which is in conservation, you've got the land, not the land trust, the Nature Conservancy in Conservancy.
Trustees have.
Trustees are up above, the Frelinghuysen Trust, even farther up.
Mass Wildlife has a.
Mass Wildlife. The question is, what is a development? Is it developments not meaning building, but developments like, I don't know, climate change?
Things that come up, I think it's
yeah.
quite general.
I think that's maybe not the best word.
I was alarmed when I first read it, and then I was like, oh, okay, they don't mean
But
development.
maybe another word would be helpful.
Yeah. So you were talking about protection.
And this starts by saying through the union of stakeholders. And I think on the previous commission, they actually had stakeholders, which we have them but not in the same way. So I don't like that as a current statement. I don't think that's really accurate.
Their previous stakeholders was Berkshire Regional Planning Commission, Marion Fathers, Mass Department of Environmental Management ACEC program, Mass Department of Fisheries and Wildlife, Massachusetts Highway Department, Massachusetts Historical Commission, Massachusetts Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program, Mass Turnpike Authority, Nature Conservancy, Stockbridge and Lee Concom, Stockbridge and Lee Land Trusts, Tennessee Gas Pipeline, Kampoosa Stewardship Committee.
Yeah, so those were
It's really long. And when we discussed this list, I think in our first meeting, we also said trustees of reservation, BNRC, the New England Wildflower Society, which is now the Native Plant Trust, Stockbridge, Muncie Community. And so our list became even longer, but some of these we haven't really, Massachusetts Historical Commission, we haven't really talked about that much at all.
My point is, on the previous commission, those stakeholders were part of the commission.
Correct.
And now
They were committee members who attended and had representatives.
So it made
And then
sense to have
most
that
of
statement.
them were active.
Les Luchanik.
That was who?
That was his name.
That's who?
Les Luchanik, he was the
Yes.
guy from the state who had the chops to get us.
So they would come up, they would come from Boston.
He's still around, but he's not in the ACEC program anymore. And then there are the landholders.
Yeah. Exactly, the people that
Yeah.
live there.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
which I'm surprised aren't part of that list.
Says, the major players currently involved in the implementation of the management plan. This is their list, so, and I mean, we have so much paperwork and documents from them. There may be another list of stakeholders. That was just like the first one that I came across when we first started reading all these things. So,
I was thinking about the cause. And I find that I can read the management plan and find, just things to think about. And to me, the cause was very clearly articulated in one place or another. The cause is concern about the degradation of the hydrologic system that supports the 5 rare natural communities. To me, that is the essence of the cause. There are lots of things that are ancillary, but to me, that was it. Is that we're all concerned that if the hydrology changes, and some of that could be from human impacts and some just things like the power of invasive species to outgrow the slow growing natural communities. And anyway, that was to me was the cause. And as I thought about the cause and the mission, again, just plumbing this wonderful document, I thought about how this body might in some form want to manage, not the best word, but this is from this document, to manage human impacts to allow the natural dynamics of the system to prevail as the dominant forces shaping the bog.
Can you say that again?
Sure, managing the human impacts on the bog to allow the natural dynamics of the system to prevail as the dominant forces shaping the bog.
I mean, anybody that's ever gardened is like, I can only do so much. Nature does what she wants to do, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of saying what,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah.
So, you had, it's managed, right? Which I know we don't.
Yeah,
love
it's
that
not,
word.
no, it's not a great word, but I took this, the actual quote is, and that human impacts be managed to allow. But if we're making an active statement, we just have to have an active verb, manage the human impacts to allow the natural dynamics of the system to prevail as the dominant forces shaping the bog.
But what are we, I guess what I'm trying to figure out at this point is that I think, I could be wrong on this, I think that the major impact that we're fighting against is the Phragmites.
Yeah.
Right, with the salt from the pike and other roads being a support in the growth of the Phragmites.
They identify, 10 threats to the bog.
Cattails.
And the main threat is invasive, and then water quality changes, water quantity changes. Those are to me, those are the.
water-
Did you say water quantity also?
Yeah.
Yeah, water quantity change is huge. If it gets too deep, it kills all the sedges and stuff that create the
They can only
bog.
take so much flooding.
But to me, those three are, I think, where our attention should be.
And that's a climate change issue to a great degree, I think.
And a human impact issue,
Yeah,
both.
I'm not sure how much, I would think it was a beaver impact
For the Phragmites?
for water change, height of water, because the culvert that goes under Rattlesnake. The guys go through with the cutter and they did a swath about 12 feet into the Phragmites on my side of the road, which is fine. But and there's also an electric line that goes under there. So I don't know whether it was the Phragmites that clogged up the culvert or what, but it started to pond on the north side, which it had not done. It used to be a stream.
Yeah.
It used to be an identifiable stream. There was a bridge that went from the back end of our property over the stream. It was that identifiable. But then the beavers came in and the beavers created the pond, which is the sort of secondary pond, because there's the first pond, which is up behind what is now, I guess, Harvey Waller's house that he's building. And that was the original pond, Marsh Pond. And then there was the stream, Marsh Brook, which went down through our property and then under the road and then through what's now the Nature Conservancy property. But that was a really, it was a stream. And now it's just a big brook.
Now it's just whatever.
It's just a bog. It's a Phragmites bog at the moment. It's bad, but we do not have the wherewithal to attack that huge area.
Well, the beavers had a big impact on the bog, because I can remember from the Marion side and the outer perimeters were all hardwoods and then the sedges and so forth. And once the beavers got down to roots, first the outlet to the bog and eventually down to Route 7, that killed all those mature trees. They raised the water level by inches, but it disseminated over feet.
So when was that?
Probably 60, 70, late 70s. Because I was there and I can remember skating out to the pond
Yeah.
through hardwoods. And then once the beavers established, all of that perimeter now became part of the existing.
But that also creates a secondary habitat that may,
Oh, yeah.
to us, oh shoot, all those trees died.
Right,
But dead trees are another type of habitat. So that's where it gets tricky. You know, you
Right.
do one thing and it causes another issue.
yeah,
with
we used to
something
watch
else.
the beavers,
Yeah,
go down and watch them as they were cutting
felling the
down
trees.
the
yeah.
perimeter of the,
There aren't any beavers anymore, as far as I know. I haven't seen any in a long time, but,
on your side.
yeah,
Yeah, because Route 7, the water's,
right.
so I'm not sure how active.
But that, the impact on the inflow to the bog was definitely beaver created. And I don't know, I keep hoping that I keep hoping that Phragmites will create land and the stream will come back. I don't know, that's crazy.
Well, you know, it's, I don't know. I keep wondering about succession for Phragmites. And is there no succession?
I don't know,
What's your-
they've been around forever.
And
Well,
that's,
don't they think that this invasive version, I think they think it maybe commingled with the native one and became stronger. There's a lot of
okay,
research that's been done on that they think this is like a new version of it, stronger and whatever.
Except that this is an imported version versus the native version.
An imported version that bred, for lack of a better word, with the native. version.
Hybridized. Yeah.
Hybridized,
Yeah,
thank you,
yeah.
and created another version, but. So, Lisa, you were saying quality of water, quantity of water, and Phragmites?
invasives.
Oh, invasives,
was
just
number one.
invasives in general, okay, good.
This was number one. So, I mean, I think that's where our focus should be. The rest, disasters, trampling, siltation, they're important diseases, but to me, these are the top ones.
Okay.
Would you relate the salt issue?
Well, that's quality of water to some extent, but it's also
Okay,
probably affecting the invasives. I don't know. I mean, they did those two studies, they did the mini study and then the bigger study. It was quite conclusive. And I feel like one of the notes that we got
From Jess,
yeah,
I thought her note said there wasn't a correlation.
no, I was thinking, I was reading the Tennessee gas pipeline has a 2020, like a project plan that goes through 2025. And they talk about the impact of salt on the area and looking at ways to reduce the effect of salt. And it's not very specific because their whole guide is like kind of a little bit general, in my opinion. So they're aware of it.
They had that monitoring station on the south side of the road. I don't even know if that's still
it's still there.
still there, but it's, yeah, I think so. But it was,
Water chemistry, whatever.
but I don't know if anybody's looking at it anymore.
Who was it set up by?
UMass.
I think they are. I mean, that's the kind of information they're trying.
That's,
Yeah.
yeah, those are, and yeah, that, I think those are the kinds of questions we need to ask. We probably have a lot of questions
Yeah.
like that. Because you had said that there's a culvert, I think, near you, when we were talking about beavers one time, I think, this was like a few meetings ago. You said sometimes you see a truck parked there,
At the,
a truck, you don't know what.
the outlet, right, at the outlet of the bog, the north, your land.
A truck doing what?
They were a couple guys down below that outlet, and if you look down there, there's a battery attached to a tree and
Yeah, that's
wires that go down into.
That's Tenneco. That's Tenneco.
Is it, I don't know who it was.
Yeah, that's the electric wire that goes
Oh, no,
there
on the south side,
on the south side.
yeah, on the outflow end of that culvert. about 15 feet.
Oh, yeah, no, there's the pipe that sticks up on the south side, but this is on the north side, there's a,
Right, that's a communication,
it's actually meant to keep
erosion.
Erosion.
Friction off,
the
friction off of
something or other. Anyway, I don't know. They dug it all up a couple of years ago. I went down and jumped up and down.
One of our big
What are you
questions
doing?
is, and we've said this many times in these meetings, who's there? What are they doing? What are they monitoring? What are they not monitoring? We
Yeah,
just don't
I don't know
And I think
anymore.
it'd be nice to get a comprehensive understanding of that and then
Right.
maybe help create connections between those groups so that they are sharing information and stuff. Okay, so we have more stuff to get to on the agenda. I think we have to come back to this, but, my big takeaway, I think, is that, and I think I knew this coming in, but I wanted some confirmation after discussing with you guys, is we're going to have a more simplified role than the previous committee for sure. And therefore our mission and our vision statement, I think, are going to be also more simplified.
Yep. Agreed.
Okay. All right. So on here, I left a couple of things on here from the meeting in March that we ended up not having a quorum for. So we said this is an oldie but a goodie. I don't know if it needs to even still be on here, but you had talked before that the 1999 resource management plan had all these commitments, and is anybody even
Right, well, I think,
addressing them or not?
yeah, I think it's important that we do start to reach out to some of these agencies. And I would prioritize Nature Conservancy, Mass Wildlife, maybe Natural Heritage.
Yeah.
To really follow up with them, maybe designate someone to follow up with them and say, we don't have time to go through those boxes. Can we go through those boxes?
Yep.
And really see what's there, because I think there's so much information that we just don't have.
I feel like, what are we, 9 months into this? And I feel like time's a wasting,
Yeah.
you know? It's just
Yeah.
like, why is this
Yep.
so, proving to be so hard?
I mean, I said I would be happy to go to Sheffield.
Yeah.
Like, and spend a Saturday or whatever day of the week, whatever, and just,
For which agency?
TNC.
and it was, because Rennie said, I know we've got stuff, but we're only 2 people. We used to be 7. I don't know if I have time, but I like what you guys are doing, and so I was like, can I just come to your office?
So can we follow up with that? Do you have time to do it?
Yeah, I don't know him. Was he, one of you guys?
Yeah, and I
You were the one
just
doing it.
emailed him just to sort of say, hey, you know, is there anything
Who is it?
these months?
Rennie
Rennie Wendell
Rennie Wendell.
at the Nature Conservancy. And I just haven't heard back.
Case the Diggy might have something.
We talked to her.
Did
She
you?
was going to talk to some people in the Boston office. She had a personal failure. Her computer was consumed by flood. And so she didn't have what she had formerly possessed electronically. And I think that applied to maybe even some paper things too. So, but I don't know that anybody has followed up with her
I can
to
follow up
find
with
out
Kay.
if there was anything from Boston that would, was available to us.
And maybe if we can track down Les Lucianic, he might have some stuff too.
I don't know who that is.
But he's with which, is he NHESP?
He was the one for the ACEC program originally.
Oh,
But then he moved out of that. It was a long time ago.
We initially heard back from the Wildflower Society,
Yep,
and they had given, that was
Yep.
through Micah, and he had given a contact. I can try to follow up with that. I mean, I'm curious, I thought he,
at the ACEC?
no,
Oh.
through, it wasn't Natural Heritage, but the New England Wildflower Society, whatever their name is.
Native Plant Trust.
Native Plant Trust still goes out there.
Yeah.
And does surveys. So I would love
have
to
that
see.
list of-
historical.
I mean,
Yeah, I'm on their list to do it.
Yeah.
I haven't done it recently, but I'd love to see what they've actually found there, if it's still there.
Everybody's very reluctant to share any data that involve actual information about rare and endangered
But
species.
I'm on there, I'm a volunteer,
Okay.
so I I can try to ask nicely.
Yeah,
And see if they would let me.
Which I think is
We
one
don't
of the
need the
reasons.
location, like the exact location.
Yeah, which I think is one of the sort of hurdles that somehow we have to find a way to overcome, that people are less reluctant to share stuff with us. I don't know, do we need to sign
Are
something?
they still active?
Yeah.
Because I used to meet a young lady who used to come out and she and I'd go through. It was just tremendously educational.
Yes.
I mean, I did.
But so they must have,
Yeah,
The
so
data.
what would be interesting is their notes of today, the 15, 50. I mean, they were there in the 70s. So,
and I'm sure they keep that data.
yeah, that'd be valuable information to see that change and,
I'll write a draft note and run it by you and then send it. I'll send it to the person I know there and see if we
Good.
can.
Because you got the list from them of, it was like, this particular plant last seen in 1999. And then there was another plant, 2007. So
Well, because they don't survey everybody.
right, they don't survey everything every year. So it wasn't a super helpful list, I guess, to have an understanding of what they're doing there. But
I can see if there's more information that they'd be willing to give us, or if they want to come to a meeting.
I went out on the fog in a canoe with my cousin probably 15 years ago, and she was an expert in dragonflies and butterflies and moths and stuff. She identified 900 different species of moth out in front of her doorway. I mean, it was amazing. She took huge numbers of pictures. Unfortunately, she died a couple of years ago, and all of that kind of went with her. She had boxes and boxes of photographs that she had taken of all these things, and we couldn't find anybody to take them, so they just went.
Oh, God.
Which we both felt awful about, but she was just beside herself on the number of different dragonflies and damselflies and things that were there that she had never seen anywhere else.
oh, that's neat. I just saw my first one today.
And she spent a lot of time on the Quabbin. She, she had canoed around the Adirondacks. She spent time in Maine and New Hampshire, and she was really blown away by what she saw there. So that's another, species that probably should be identified.
Yeah, insects for sure. Okay, so then status of outreach and records collection, we were just talking about Nature Conservancy, so you just reached out.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, if you hear back from him and he's open to letting us go and dig around,
Yep.
and just see what's there. I'm sure it's some duplicative stuff of what we already have, but we want the stuff that's not duplicative.
Right.
And also I guess I didn't really get the sense when he came to our meeting that they're not doing anything actively there. Right? He didn't,
That was my impression.
yeah, he didn't say.
Yeah.
He just said we used to be 7 and now we're 2 and spread thin.
But he was interested in what we were doing,
Yeah, definitely.
asking him again.
Yep.
Okay, and then one of you guys asked me to put the MVP grant on here.
I did, and part of it was inspiration from this book, which if you have not read, it's really good in terms of bog histories and draining bogs for peat and all of that. But one of the main takeaways from the book for me was how important bogs and fens are for both carbon and methane.
Really capturing.
Capturing it and what gets lost when the bog gets lost.
Oh,
So it just made me think about an MVP grant and I haven't formulated it more than that. But
what
if
is
there's-
an MVP grant?
It's a climate-related
Mass-
fund, and they've got lots of money.
It's a state.
Vulnerability grant.
Oh, sure. Okay.
And I checked with Patrick because the deadline was May, so we just missed the deadline, but it's every year. So he said, you have a whole year to come up with something. I thought we should think about it because I think if we found someone who could do, whether it's Phragmites or whatever, invasive management, we might be able to tie it into an MVP grant focused on sequestering carbon and methane, which I didn't realize.
I think that would be so relevant.
Yeah, or CPA funds,
Yeah.
piece something together.
CPA funds are tricky because while the whole public benefit thing, if you can't, people can't go there,
Yeah,
is a little
Right.
bit of an issue. And you really don't want people tromping around in
No.
there. First of all, because you can, fall in.
Oh, yeah, it's a safety issue along with an environment.
No parking.
There's no parking.
There's plenty of to do.
We went out on the bog and we came through, how did we went through, I think, the Nature Conservancy property, and then we had to have somebody from the turnpike to get us over the turnpike to get in.
yeah.
And it was fascinating. It's the weirdest experience. You feel like you're walking on a waterbed because
Oh, yes.
it's bizarre, but it was very cool.
Okay, so MVP grant, I think that sounds very exciting. But we have a year to figure it out. Okay. And then, did you guys see the email from Patrick about this Justice 40? It's a federal program that gives money to communities that are impacted by climate change. And we were listed as extremely impacted. I can't remember the exact language, but it was
a lot.
yeah, it was a lot. It was like like three things, and we were all three things. So
There were only 3 communities, and I think it was only 3 communities in Massachusetts that got this
Yeah.
designation. I don't know why we did, but we did.
no, neither. So he asked that we have a rep from our committee who focuses on Justice 40 and tries to figure out it's a pretty complicated program. I should have read it again right before this meeting because I looked at it when he sent it. You know, there's an education aspect of it. There's transportation. There's almost every section of the federal government is involved in this. I think it probably is every area of federal government that's involved in it. So I don't feel like we're necessarily ready to figure out a rep, but I wanted to just talk about it if anybody, because you guys are probably talking about it on the other committees that you're on as well. Not yet. You have to at some point, right? So let me just keep this on here. and
Especially
we'll-
now that Patrick's been reelected, he's gonna,
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sure we'll hear from him on
But I mean,
this.
there's a lot of money available.
no, it-
Potentially available.
Yeah,
Well, there's a lot of money from
do
the
things.
MVP grant too. I mean, they just are waiting to throw the money around, so.
Okay. Public comment? Nobody from the public? Does anybody have anything else?
I'm just curious, and I think we need to think about what we would do if we had money. You know, why do we need money and what would we do with it?
invasive management.
Well,
Yeah,
the reason
How?
we were formed originally because the town, not this last town meeting last week, but the one a year ago, put aside 50 grand for a hydrology study. We haven't done anything regarding that, but
Well, the hydrology study, the reaction that, at least from what I know, the reaction to the hydrology is what's happening on Route 7. I don't know that anybody, that's probably not the right way to put it, but I'm going to put it that way because I can't think of any other way to put it at this point. I don't know that anybody else cares about what's going on in Kampoosa beyond what it's doing downstream.
okay. Okay.
That's the key, is that it's flooding under Route 7, it's flooding Heron Pond, it's flooding Wallace Road. And every time, and of course, you know, from our perspective, when the water rises, it threatens the bog itself. Because it has a very limited ability to respond to rising and lowering waters. But I think that the hydrology study came out of human people's concerns about their basements and their foundations and their,
Septic system, yeah,
Yeah,
their personal
exactly.
property.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that helps us a lot.
So let me just ask a different question. Didn't we hear that Mass Wildlife will be burning there?
So what they
Part
did
of
was
their application.
they went out there were 2 things that they went out to bid on and nobody there were no bids. So that was through that Masscom, or what's the name of that website where you can go and see all the projects that the state is going out to bid on. And you can just search Kampoosa and they pop right up. So they didn't have, nobody bid on them. But that was potentially burning and all those things. And then someone from NHESP came and met, I know you weren't there, but met with Father Richard.
And the fire chief.
Yes, yeah.
There was no
And
other
recapped
town,
that.
there was no other
I know.
person there other than Father Richard and the fire chief.
I know. And then he sent us that recap email. His name was Alex, and I talked to him on the phone for quite a while, saying how they were going to move forward. And I think burning was part of that as well. He said it's a multifaceted approach to restoration. In addition to prescribed fire, other activities would be water quality and hydrology repairs, invasive species control, Phragmites, and glossy buckthorn removal. Fire plays an important role in restoration and maintenance.
And has that come to the Concom?
It has.
Yep. It came to us a few years ago. They did Agawam and Kampoosa at the same time. We denied the project and they said, So they came where we qualified the project. We particularly qualified Agawam because Clover Swan, who was alive at the time, was very concerned about their using chemicals in Agawam and what that might possibly do to the wells that surround it, which, you know. So, but they paired the two, Kampoosa and Agawam, in their proposal.
Did
And
they do this work?
So he said this is a few years out, timing wise, it's a few years out. He said they have to finalize, so this was in December. They have to finalize what their plan is going to be in the next few months. And then he said, we have a lot of other state agencies that we have to go through in order to finalize that plan. And he goes, we kind of come to Stockbridge more towards the end of the whole process. So he said a few years.
they're going to run out of permission. They're going to have to get it renewed.
An extension.
Yeah. Because that was at least 3 years ago, I think, that they did this proposal. We were very interested in the whole burning thing because at least that would be less, it's a natural process, you know.
That's what he talks about. I mean, he says it's an important role in the restoration and maintenance. And he said that, well, we also know from the study that was done at UMass Amherst that,
From the archaeological.
yeah, they
evidence of it happening.
prescribed burns in that area.
And
He
there's
said-
evidence in Kampoosa that it's been done there.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, yeah. And he said it, without fire and other management, the vegetation will continue to degrade, slowly being overtaken by cattail Phragmites and woody plants like glossy buckthorn.
Okay.
Historical records and archaeological evidence show that it was frequently managed by indigenous people who used fire for the last 4,000 years to influence vegetation. Yeah, because it causes an explosion in growth usually, so. Yeah, so he said it's a few years out. Okay.
A quick question about Phragmites management. So when Phragmites is it cut above or below the surface of the water? Historically, you know, how has it been handled? Do you have any idea?
Jesse would cut it above a couple inches. Then they were using, I'm going to say Roundup, but it
Yeah,
was
glyphosate.
Glyphosate.
They were taking cotton balls.
It's called clip and drip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has it ever been done below the surface of the water? I just happened to be reading something about the efficacy of cutting it below the
I
surface of the
don't
water.
believe
and I
so,
just wondered.
because you couldn't control the,
Accuracy of the drip.
yeah.
Well, you would skip the drip, I guess.
Yeah, you wouldn't be applying pesticide, herbicide, you would just be, you would be cutting.
Yeah, I've heard that consistent mowing is effective. I've also heard that the burning is effective, but of course it spreads through the root system, so you really
So
have to.
you have to dig it out, kind of like,
That's-
you can't even dig it out like
That's-
knotweed.
It just stimulates. I think.
Stimulates it.
And I've also heard that burning stimulates it.
Yeah,
It's
It's a
really mixed.
stimulated plant, I think. Easily stimulated, yeah. Yeah.
it's really
Yeah.
miserable. And of course, the buckthorn sends out poison through its roots and which affects everything around it. That's why buckthorn is so
I just found two
successful.
little things on the edge of my yard. Just keeps coming back. Okay, so if there's no other new business, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Okay, thank you.